Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Yang from KAIST, Graduate School of AI. It's really my honor to serve as a chair for this session. So today we will explore the theme Foundations of Next Generation AI, featuring very wonderful 6 presentations by researchers at the National AI Research Lab. So in today's session, each researcher will have 15-minute presentation without any QA session due to the time constraint. So if you have any questions or comments, I think you can use the discussion session if time allows, or you can use the you can contact presenters using the break time. Okay, so our first presenter is Professor Ichiro Takeuchi from RIKEN. So Professor Takeuchi is a professor at the Nagoya University and serves as the team director of data-driven experimental design team at RIKEN AIP, Japan. So the title of his talk is Research Design in Data-Driven Science, Building a Framework for Reliability and Transparency. So please welcome Professor Ichiro Takeuchi with a big round of applause.
Yeah, thank you so much for introduction. So first of all, I'd like to congratulate Korean AI research community on the establishment of AI Research Lab. And thank you so much for inviting me to this wonderful symposium. I'm Ichiro Takeuchi, coming from Japan. I'm professor in Nagoya University and a team leader at RIKEN AIP. So let me briefly talk about what is RIKEN AIP. So RIKEN is one of the biggest research institutes in Japan, which continues more than 100 years. And RIKEN funded the Center for Advanced Intelligence Project called AIP in 2016 for AI research. We have more than 100 full employees and several visiting researchers and intern students. And the AIP was initially planned to continue for 10 years, but now it is decided to be extended until 2032. Our main campus is located in the center of Tokyo, just 10 minutes walk from Tokyo Station. So if you have a chance to visit Japan for a conference or other things, please contact AIP. So we are happy to organize a seminar talk in this kind of nice place. Actually, many teams in RIKEN are located several cities in Japan. And I'm from Nagoya because many team leaders, including me, is a university professor. So we have 46 teams, roughly divided into generic technology group, goal-oriented technology group, and AI in society group. I'm one of the team leaders in goal-oriented technology group, in which the main focus is AI for science. And today, I'm going to talk about AI for science. So, director of AIP is Masashi Sugiyama here. Yeah, he was also supposed to come here, but he couldn't make it. All right, so for science and technology, AI play a very, very important role. For example, if we want to construct a hypothesis of research target, we can now use generative AI. And in order to predict the performance of a hypothesis, various types of predictive AI can be used. In order to verify the hypothesis, we would need some experiment. And in order to design the experiment, we can use a sort of interactive AI. After getting a lot of experimental results, in order to get some knowledge, we can use, for example, explainable AI. Like this, many components of scientific research can be now replaced with some AI. In my team and many other teams in RIKEN AIP are developing machine learning theory and algorithm for science. For example, generative models for molecules, proteins, and many others, and also AutoML for scientific data analysis pipeline, and Bayesian optimization for experimental design, and feature extraction from structural data, such as graphs. But in this talk, I would like to focus on one important topic in AI for science. That is reliable AI-driven science. So reliability is very, very important in AI-driven science. For example, in medical field, if we want to make an important decision, such as the choice of the treatment, we have, based on the result given by AI, we have to guarantee that the results are reliable. So how we usually quantify the reliability of the scientific study? Traditionally, this is based on design of experiments. In traditional science, data is collected through experimental design, and the model or hypothesis are obtained based on expert knowledge. Given that the data and the model are obtained in that way, then the reliability can be quantified using the framework of statistical design of experiment, which is pioneered by Ronald Fisher long time ago. But in AI-driven science, now data would be collected comprehensively and diversely, and the model or hypothesis would be obtained based on data and the AI algorithm. Since how data is collected and how model is obtained are totally different from traditional science, we have to develop a new type of design of experiment framework for AI-driven science. This is what we are working on right now. So let's see what is how we can quantify the significance of scientific finding by AI using an metaphor of finding a diamond in the garbage. Let's see, in the upper figure, we have data containing both signal and noise. Using powerful AI algorithms, such as already trained neural network, we expect to find a diamond. That is a true finding that corresponds to scientific finding. This is what we want to do. But on the other hand, in the lower case, where we only have noise in the data, since AI is too powerful, it might be able to find something look like diamond. But this is a fake diamond. And in science, we don't want to find this kind of fake diamond because this is a false positive discovery. So in other words, I would say AI is so powerful to find something from nothing. This is perhaps somehow related to the concept of hallucination in the generative AI. So we have to be able to tell the difference between the true diamond and this fake diamond in a quantitative manner. So in order to tell the difference, we will need uncertainty quantification. So if you are in a machine learning conference, you will see a lot of talks about uncertainty quantification. And among many other approaches, in this talk, I will focus on so-called selective inference, SI. So selective inference is a framework to quantify statistical significance of AI-driven discoveries. So in particular, selective inference will be able to provide proper p-value or confidence interval as a traditional design of experiment, even if the results are obtained based on AI. So what is selective inference? So let me explain it using some picture. So ordinal p-value in traditional science is the quantification of how surprising with the finding. So it will be defined like this. On the other hand, in selective inference, we use so-called selective p-value. Selective p-value is the answer to the following question. How surprising with the finding given that it is generated by AI. So this yellow part is very, very important. In order to properly evaluate the statistical significance of the AI-driven discovery, we have to consider this yellow part somehow. Mathematically, p-value is defined as the probability of observing more extreme value than the observed finding. On the other hand, selective p-value would be defined based on the conditional distribution as shown here. Selective p-value is the probability of observing more extreme value than the observed finding, given that the finding is generated by AI. So this yellow part corresponds to the conditioning part in this conditional probability. If we can compute this kind of conditional probability, we can somehow nicely quantify the statistical significance of AI-driven discovery. So the study of selective inference gained attention in the context of statistical inference for selected features using lasso about 10 years ago. Initially, selective inference was mainly considered in the context of feature selection problems, but it has since been applied to a wide range of problems. And the technical challenge of selective inference lies in characterizing and computing the conditional distribution given the hypothesis selection. So in the remaining 5 minutes, let me talk about what we are doing, selective inference for deep learning models. So let's think about a specific problem in medical image analysis. Given this kind of medical image, and suppose that we already have a trained neural network that can highlight an attention region of the image. For example, when we provide this kind of cancer image with tumor lesion, if neural network can detect this attention lesion as a tumor lesion as an attention lesion. Now, we want to quantify the statistical significance of this attention lesion in the form of p-value. And when we provide this kind of cancer image, we expect that the p-value to be very, very small because this should be statistically significant. On the other hand, even when we provide a normal image, since deep neural network is very, very powerful in some sense, it might be able to find some lesion that is different from others. And when we compute a p-value, since this is just an artifact, we expect a large p-value. But if we don't really consider the fact that attentions are given by deep neural network, both the p-value will be very small, 0.000. It means that it's statistically significant. Uppercase is fine, but in the lower case, it is problematic. This is an adjust artifact, but still, without considering the fact, the p-value is wrongly very small. But if we do the selective inference, meaning that we condition on the fact that they are obtained by neural network, then the selective p-value in the lower case is 0.604. That means that it's not statistically significant. We can correctly tell that this is just a true negative. So the computation of selective inference is a little bit complicated, and I don't have time to talk about the detail, but roughly computed as follows. Step 1, consider a sequence of images along the test statistic direction. Step 2, identify a set of images for which the same attention region is selected, and then compute a conditional probability for a selective p-value. The second step for finding the region that provides the same hypothesis is actually technically very, very challenging, because that means that we need to solve an inverse problem of deep learning model. I'm not going to talk about the detail, but there are several ways to do that, and we also want to develop a way to do that for a deep neural network and successfully compute a selective p-value. So these are the examples of the naive and selective p-values applied to the medical image analysis. In the left part, they are normal image without a tumor. In the right part, they are tumor image with some tumor lesion. If we first look at the right side, then our AI will be able to identify some tumor lesions successfully. And both of the naive p-value and selective p-value are almost 0.0, meaning that in the right case, it tells that what AI identified attention lesion is statistically significant. But the problem is on the left side. Here, naive p-value, without considering the fact that this is identified by AI, the naive p-value is very small, 0.027, 0.028, 0.000. So this is a false positive finding. On the other hand, if we apply the selective inference, it tells that it's true negative. It is just an artifact. So this is just an example. But for AI-driven science, we will need to quantify the reliability somehow. So AI is reshaping how scientific discoveries are made, shifting from knowledge-driven to data-driven research. So ensuring the reliability of AI-driven discovery remains vital for reproducibility of science. So at RIKEN AIP, we are developing AI methods that accelerate reliable AI for science, scientific discovery in many fields. And I would like to say that the members of RIKEN AIP, including me, would really like to explore various collaboration with the AI community in Korea. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Professor Takeuchi, for your insightful presentation. And next we have Professor Tae-Eui Kam, Associate Professor at Korea University in the Department of Artificial Intelligence. He was former researcher at the Biomedical Research Imaging Center at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. So he will give a talk titled AI-Powered Drug Discovery from Molecular Property Prediction to Generation. So please welcome Professor Kam with a big round of applause.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here today. I'm Tae Kam in the Department of AI at Korea University. So here I'd like to talk about AI-powered drug discovery and share our recent research addressing its key challenges. So what is drug discovery? So in simple terms, it includes the process of developing new drug molecules with desired chemical or biological properties to prevent, treat, or cure some disease. Then what makes drug discovery so challenging? It is widely known that the total number of possible drug-like molecules in chemical space has been estimated to exceed 10 to 60 power. A number so vast compared to the molecules we have made that it is practically infinite. So it is not surprising that our exploration in chemical space has so far been extremely limited. That's exactly why we need AI to assist us in drug discovery. I think AI can play major roles in the drug discovery pipeline. So the first step is molecular property predictions, which is the most fundamental aspects of drug discovery. It is highly intuitive for AI and relatively straightforward to implement. The next step is de novo drug design, where AI generates novel molecules with desirable properties beyond already known compounds. The last one is drug verification, where AI helps verify the designed molecules are metabolizable, safe, and effective. By supporting this step, AI can significantly accelerate drug discovery and improve the likelihood of developing successful drug candidates. Then let's take a closer look at the first step, molecular property prediction. In this step, it is very important for AI to predict key molecular properties such as atomic properties, which is directly linked to how the molecules behave, interact, and functions in human body. In general, molecules can be represented in these three different ways. The most basic form is 1D text representation, such as smile strings. Beyond that, we have the 2D graph representation capturing atomic connectivity. The last one is the 3D graph representation, which includes special coordinates of atoms, providing detailed structure of information. In our previous work last year, we employed a fusion transformer to effectively utilize the diverse molecular representations. So here, we also aligned representation tokens using combinatorial laws to capture their complementary information. So in the experiment on the molecular net benchmark, we showed that our FTMMR achieved strong performance by effectively aligning molecular representation. So now, let's look at the second step, de novo drug design. Here, we can formulate this step as a constraint optimization problem. So the goal is to find the molecule M maximizing the objective function F that represent the desired molecular properties. So in essence, we are trying to find the molecules in chemical space that maps to the most desirable point in the functional space. For molecular optimization, there are three different types of generative model. So first one is GAN. I think everyone knows the GAN. And the next one is VAE. So here, an encoder embeds an initial molecules into a lattice space, and then the decoder reconstructs it back to in unoptimized molecules. Finally, the last one is reinforcement learning. In this approach, the model frames the optimization problem as a Markov decision process. So the molecules is treated as the state, and the policy network takes an action, such as adding or removing atoms. Then the feedback from the reward model is then used to update the policy networks. In current stage, this RL approach is currently one of the leading SOTA models in molecular optimization. Even with these promising approaches during this drug discovery, it is still remain challenging because it is naturally a multi-objective optimization problem. For new drug to succeed, it must simultaneously be drug-like, bioactive, safe, and so on. So previously, most widely used method was simultaneously optimization through scalarization. This approach converts multiple objectives into a single total score. In other words, it aimed to optimize everything at once. While this approach is simple and straightforward, there is a major limitation, the reward hacking problem. It means that the model hacks the reward function by optimizing the easier objective while ignoring the harder ones. Therefore, to address this issue, we designed DIMO, the dynamic multi-objective optimization method. As the first step of the DIMO, the decomposition modules determine the order of objectives according to their difficulties. And in the subsequent progressive optimization, it starts by optimizing the most difficult objective first. And in the next step, it added the other objective one by one according to the order. And then finally, it optimized them together step by step. So we evaluated the timer on the PMO benchmark. And in the result, we figured out that our timers significantly outperformed competing methods, highlighting its optimization capability in multi-objective conditions. The next issue in drug design is the necessity of offline model-based optimization. As you know, in real-world drug discovery, the oracle function is wet-lab experiments, which are very slow and expensive compared to the dry lab experiment. This means we need to strategize to improve our model without direct access to the true oracle function. To address this, we introduced an offline MBO process. During this process, the new drug candidates will be evaluated by the pre-trained computational model, which is considered as a proxy oracle. And then the generative model is subsequently updated using the additional genetic data without requiring real-time feedback from wet-lab experiments. So this offline MBO allowed the generative model to be updated while waiting for wet-lab experiment result, enabling the generation of high-quality candidate molecules for the next round and accelerating the overall drug discovery pipeline. In our recent study presented at ICML this year, we explored several strategies to make this offline MBO process more efficient. So our first question was, how can we generate molecules beyond the offline dataset? In conventional generative models, the new molecules are sampled from the same distribution of the offline dataset. That means it tends to produce molecules that are very similar to the molecules already in the dataset. Indeed, we designed the StitchNet. So it is inspired by the trajectory stitches in offline RL. The next question is, how can we make the proxy oracle more reliable? To achieve this, we designed a rank-based proxy that runs the ranking relationship between two different molecules based on their desirable property scores. Since our ranking-based proxy has a relatively easier task than existing score-based proxies that aim to exactly approximate oracle value directly, it can provide more reliable feedback. Finally, how can we update the generative model to enable offline MBO? To update the generative model based on this ranking feedback, we use preference optimization approaches. That means we update the generative model by increasing the likelihood of the winning molecules while decreasing the likelihood of the losing molecules. So in the experiment on the PMO benchmark, our POSTECH achieved clearly superior performance than other methods. So in the figure, we can see that the Plateau frontal visualization, so in the figure, we can see that the Plateau fronts produced by our method are located much farther toward the other boundary. That indicates that a higher optimization quality. So I believe a major limitation of real-world AI-powered drug discovery is that the AI community, including myself, tend to focus heavily on in silico molecular generation. So consequently, the field of drug verification remains largely unexplored. So I believe by collaborating with experts in biology and chemistry, we are able to conduct interesting and challenging research aimed at real-world drug discovery. Thank you for your attention. So I would also like to thank my two students, especially these two guys, Dong-hee Shin and Young-an Song, the first author of the research presented in this talk. Finally, our lab is also engaged in a wide range of medical image research, so I would greatly appreciate your interest and potential collaboration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kang, for your presentation. Our third speaker is Professor Hwang, Associate Professor at Yonsei University. He holds a PhD from the University of Wisconsin Madison and formerly was an assistant professor at the University of Pittsburgh. So please welcome Professor Hwang to the podium.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Hwang, Associate Professor at Yonsei University in the Department of AI. Today I'll talk about what you see on the title, Dissecting Vision Language Models, the models that use images and texts for some interesting training-free solutions for various tasks. Vision language models are actually working these days, so they actually use images and text, such as you can see here. You have upper left corner, you have an image of a cat, and that actually had asked the question, explain why this photo is funny. And the answer comes out to be the cat is wearing a mask that gives the cat smile. So they're actually understanding images, and they can also identify objects. As you can see here, the expression is Bruno Mars and Blackpink Rose, and they're highlighted accordingly. And you can also generate some very interesting videos. A kitten rides a car drifting upward in a cozy room, capturing the 4 real details. These are all done by VLMs. But they're often not working as intended. So on the left is another VQA problem. Is there something in the image? And if that something is banana, it actually highlights the banana, what we call the attention. But it also has a strongly looking at some background, some completely irrelevant regions like these red boxes here. And on the right, it's the example that I showed you before was an easy example, but they're also based off of our model that I'll be presenting at some point. Modern VLMs actually are not really capable of generating videos or images that are unusual, like this squirrel in a Hawaiian shirt walks through a rainy European-style street holding a rainbow umbrella, but it's not actually holding a rainbow umbrella, and this Eiffel Tower made of water is not made of water. Okay? So these failures are across both understanding and generation. And some standard solutions are basically what you already know, some fine-tuning, extra modules, optimize the inference time, or try to come up with better prompts using LLMs. What I'm trying to argue throughout the next 30 minutes or so is that if you're able to understand the insides of vision language models, you can pretty surprisingly find some easy and training-free solutions. So we're going to be asking the following 3 questions. We're going to be asking whatever VLMs that you're using. First question is, are you actually looking at what you're supposed to be looking at? That's from our Eclair 25 work. And the next question that we asked is, do you actually need all the attention has for the localization, identifying where the objects are, given the image and the prompt? And that's based off our CPR work. And the last question is, can you actually generate an image or videos from rare prompts, like an Eiffel Tower made of water? So that's the last work they've been working on, so I'll go through them one at a time. So when we say how the vision language models look at the images, we're mainly talking about cross-attention. So the model actually takes the image as an input, it's broken down into vision tokens, and the text is also broken down into text tokens, and they have some attention going on. And what you're able to see on the right is that understand how the model is actually, where the model is looking at, given this clock word. So these places with some highlighted boxes are basically what the model is looking at. And there are some issues. What the model should be looking at in this case is the clock, but it's not actually only looking at the clock like this blue square, it's also looking at the red square, so completely irrelevant regions. So this is what we'll try to understand, and try to understand the cause of it. And this causes what we call the visual attention sink. So if you're familiar with the attention sink in the LLMs, that's basically the same thing is happening. In other words, so simply put, the attention is actually going to some irrelevant places like BOS token, but it's also happening at the visual tokens as well. So it's looking at some completely irrelevant regions. The question is identifying whether high attention is actually, so it could be a useful token with high attention, but it could also be a useless visual sync token with high attention. So a way to identify that is pretty simple. It's just like the LLMs, they have some specific dimensions where the spikes are happening. So even if it has a high the attention, if you take a look at the hidden dimension, like 14, 15, and 25, 33, I believe this is based off of the Llama 2. So this model is actually showing the same spikes in those regions. So even if the attention is high, if you actually take a look at the actual hidden dimensions, it's actually happening at these two exact points, no matter what the images are. So as long as you're able to identify tokens with high attentions at these specific dimensions, then it's pretty safe to conclude that those tokens are actually visual sync tokens. So based off of this observation, what we did is a pretty simple experiment. So we can just simply remove them, mask those visual tokens, and see if that actually breaks the visual language models, and it actually does not. So even if we remove those visual language tokens, since they're actually useless anyways, they don't actually make a huge degradation in the performance. But if you just randomly remove tokens, like you see on this blue bar, then performance drops, meaning not all of them are happen to be useless. We accidentally ended up removing some useful tokens as well. So what do we do with then next? What we can do is kind of recycle them. Those high attentions, we can redistribute them. So what we first do is identify the useful attention heads. They have some high number of useful visual tokens and small number of useless visual tokens. And what we do is kind of pull them into this budget. Okay, you pull them together, pull them from just the sync tokens, and then we redistribute them to some potentially useful tokens. It's just a redistribution process, and this is what we call the visual attention redistribution. Okay, and this is up until now, what I've been telling you is completely training free, no training, nothing, and just a plug and play. So I'm not going to show you the numbers, but just to show you some qualitative results, the question we have given this image is the word in this logo feels market. And originally, it's saying no, because we don't have enough attention in the right spots. But now with our model, it is able to redistribute those visual sync tokens, attention values, and have some stronger attentions in the correct spots, and is able to correctly answer them. So that was our first mechanism in dissection 1, and we're going to move on to the next one, which is about the visual grounding. Visual grounding is pretty simple. Basically, given a free-form phrase like, can you segment the left white horse, one next to black? It's a pretty complicated question that it's asking, but what it should be doing is using these large visual language models, it is able to actually locate the left white horse, one next to black one. Okay? So if it's able to understand it and locate this object, by understanding this text, what we can do is use the segment anything model to segment them or put the bounding box around it. So this is generally called the visual grounding. But the question we're asking is, do we actually need to train them? Do we need all those complicated heads? It turns out that there are only a very few heads, literally just a few out of 1,000 that actually are able to locate them. So the ground truth with respect to this expression is the following. So the expression is the pizza mouth, and what it should be highlighting, what the attention map should be pointing at, is the bottom half of the pizza, which does look like a mouth of a smiling pizza face. And if you take the average of all the attention heads, it does not look beautiful. They're scattered around, meaning not all of them are actually pointing at in the right direction. Some of them are pointing at the background. But what you're seeing here is this L14, meaning layer 14, head 24, and layer 14, head 13. Those two heads, somewhere in the model, are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. And the question is, we somehow need to identify those localization heads that are really able to just naturally localize them. It's not that we have specifically trained them, they just happen to be working, and there's always a few that actually work as intended. So what we did is to try to find them. It's like finding a needle in a haystack, but it's not that actually difficult. What we did is first, First, identify the localization heads that actually naturally have high attention sums because we're looking for useful attention values. And the next is you also want to look at attention heads that if you look at the attention map, they don't actually they're not scattered around. We want the ones that are tightly clustered together because that probably means that it's pointing at something meaningful. So what we're looking at is one with the attention heads with high attention sums, and two, attention heads with low spatial entropy. Based off of these, what we can do is just run through this throughout many examples, and then identify basically the frequency, set some sort of threshold, and then see if they are selected. And surprisingly, there's usually just 2 or 3 that more consistently appear than the other ones. So in this case, for lava, 1.57 billion, L14H24, L14H13, L14H26. These are the ones that appear more than twice the other ones. So just basically, once we identify them through some prior experiments, again, no training, what we can do is whenever the same problem is set up, the input is the image and the text comes in, just look at those localization heads, combine them, do some smoothing, and then use that as the input for the SAM and do some segmentation, or just use that as a bounding box as it is. Okay? Again, just a few more examples. You've probably seen this in one of the prior slides. So just using these heads, it's able to do this segmentation, visual grounding segmentation. So, okay. So I'm not showing the numbers. These are actually often better than the fine-tuned ones. So yeah, and again, there's no training going on. Everything's done during the inference. So what we've looked at is where the attention gets wasted and which heads are actually acting like the object detectors. And we're going to finish up with the generation of the rare prompts. I'm only showing you the failure cases because I'm going to show you how these diffusion transformers, which are basically the state-of-the-art generation models these days. So the question is, how good is rare text-to-image video generation? These are rare and long and sometimes just unusual, like a dragon made of watermelon slices, breathing flakes of snow into the sky. Sometimes the prompts can be even longer. So we're just kind of want to push the limit of these vision language models, make some weird images, cool videos and such, but they don't work as intended. So we're going to be asking the following again. Do we need extra training, or is the model just able to do that internally and we just have to give it a little bit of a push? So obviously the conclusion is that the models actually already know rare semantics and they're just buried somewhere underneath. And in this case, we looked at the embedding geometry, specifically the text embedding geometry. And some prior works have acknowledged that the global anisotropy is basically kind of the unevenness of the distribution of the embeddings are pretty useful characteristics. So what we did is simply just boosting the signals. We just increased the variance of these embeddings, literally just take the first PCs and then boosted it, amplified it. And that ended up having the effect of increasing the global anisotropy, so unevenness got amplified even further, and that actually happens to be pretty useful. And what we also wanted to focus on is the local isotropy. So locally, we want these specific details to be standing out, not buried underneath by some global information. So by doing this, we're able to increase the local isotropy and enhance each word's semantics. So if we scale down, so given this a tiger, striped golden retriever, and an oval-shaped table, if we scale down the variance, then basically there's nothing going on compared to the original image. But if we increase the variance, you can actually see a golden retriever with a tiger stripes and on top of an oval-shaped table, and also a dandelion running with legs. Okay? Not going to get into details of the technical stuff, but there are basically just 2 simple things, again, training-free things going on. First, we just take the top K PC embeddings, okay, PC subspaces of the text embeddings, and then just amplify it, just multiply by some positive values greater than 1. Next, what we do is, first, once we take the top K, we look at the K plus 1, basically the next best PC, and then just do some simple rotation and then align it to the semantic vector. So it's just a way to safely kind of emphasize the local isotropy, and this is all we did. We just needed to simply do a little bit of a training-free manipulation of the text embeddings and be able to achieve what you're seeing here. These are some rare text-to-image generation results. So SD, so Stable Diffusion 3 is basically the baseline, what we apply our method on, and R2F is some comparative method. And what you see here is a horned lemon, and you actually have a horned lemon and a star-shaped tennis ball and a grape made of marble, an axe-shaped cloud. So basically, it works across different models. Again, just keep on saying this in a training-free manner. Across the properties and shapes and textures, there are more examples in the paper with multiple objects. And these are videos. So with respect to the Cog Video X, which is actually pretty capable of generating pretty realistic videos, they are not as good when it comes down to these really weird prompts, like a fox playing piano in a desert at the golden hour with a distant dust storm and cinematic hyperreal lighting. I mean, it's a very long text, very complicated. I can't really grasp where I should be generating this from, but they start making sense. Okay? And also, just lastly, a miniature traveler climbs the full-size napkin folded like a mountain. That's actually happening in the baseline model as well, but it's just not as dynamic as you wanted this to be. Okay? So that was a pretty short talk, just talking about different ways of dissecting vision language models, and they are actually, once you actually understand them better, they allow us to come up with, again, very intuitive training-free solutions. So we started the first case where we discovered the visual attention sinks for better VQA training-free way. In case 2, we pinpoint the localization heads, just a few, like 3 out of thousands, for better visual grounding, again, in a training-free way. And case 3, we boosted rare semantics just through some variance scaling and the subspace rotation, again, for better rare image video generation in a training-free way. So I guess what we have to do next is just do some more dissections. And that concludes the talk. If you're interested, please visit our website. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you once again, Professor Hwang. The next speaker is Professor Noseong Park. So he's currently a faculty member at KAIST, School of Computing. Previously, he was a professor at Yonsei University and George Mason University. The title of his talk is Scientific Foundation Models. So please welcome Professor Noseong Park to the podium.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. So I will discuss about the how to understand mathematical language instead of human language. So the talk title is Scientific Foundation Model. And yeah, I will present following this sequence. I will first describe the importance of partial differential equations. And after that, so I will discuss how can you solve partial differential equations with AI? And after that, some challenges and methodologies for developing scientific foundation models. Then I will conclude my presentation. So yeah, first one is PDE, partial differential equations. So there is one partial differential equation maybe all of you are aware of, which is F is equal to ma. So force is equal to mass times acceleration. So this is one of the most famous PDE, and then one of the most important PDE governing our physical processes. And after that, we also have a Black-Scholes equation for financial markets. And then we also have SIR model for epidemics. So likewise, partial differential equations are standard language describing some phenomena, physical, natural science phenomena, financial market phenomena, social science phenomena. All they are described by partial differential equations. So people now focus on how to understand natural language and how to generate the natural language. But in my talk, I will discuss how we can understand and solve this kind of PDE-related problems, so that PDE is an essential language for sciences. So here is relationship between science and engineering. Scientists deductively and inductively discover equations of motion. For instance, at the very beginning, in this step 0, we have observation or experimental results. And after that, there is scientist who can come up with this kind of PDE, describing the phenomena in this observation. And after that, step number 1 is the end of the task by physicists. In the Department of Physics, the ultimate goal is deriving partial differential equation describing natural phenomena. That's the end. And after that, in step 2, there are engineers who want to solve this kind of initial value problem to predict the future state. So here, ux, z, ux, 0 is initial state, time 0. And after that, we have to solve this integral problem to derive the future state at time t. So here, you can consider u as physical quantity, such as temperature, electric force, and whatever, right? Whatever physical quantity. And then this physical law, written in the form of PDE, describes the instantaneous change of that quantity with respect to time. And after that, we have to solve this integral problem to derive this general solution. So can you catch the relationship between differential equation and then general solution? Right? Highlighted by this red dotted line. So it is very difficult to come up with this kind of a general solution directly from PDE. Right? In many cases, analytically deriving this kind of a general solution from PDE is impossible. Otherwise, other times we can do that. Input PDE is simple. Sometimes we can derive this general solution with a pen and paper. But for important problems, such as Navier-Stokes problem and many other PDE problems, we cannot do that. So that people wanted to rely on AI for solving this kind of a problem, which is topic of scientific machine learning. And then these days, people want to build the scientific foundation model. So scientific foundation model is a model that can solve all different types of PDEs. So yeah, let me first compare scientific foundation model with existing foundation model. First one is language foundation model, LLM. So with LLM, we can do this kind of science. There is English mathematician Hugh Montgomery, and then American physicist Freeman Dyson. 80 years ago, English mathematician Hugh Montgomery visited Princeton, and then they had a lunch together. Before that, they didn't know each other. They met for the first time at their lunch place, and of course, two scientists meet, what they will discuss? Of course, research topic, right? So Hugh Montgomery showed one equation to Freeman Dyson. And then Freeman Dyson got surprised because that equation was exactly the same as what he was studying on. but topics were different. Hugh Montgomery studied about the prime numbers. And then Freeman Dyson studied about the quantum mechanics. And then no one knew there exists this kind of connection between them, right? It is very hard to come up with this kind of connection. But these days, LLMs are trained with arXiv, Nature, and Science papers, so that LLM know all these facts. But the problem of LLM is too passive. Without appropriate user prompt, LLM teaches nothing to us. But anyway, if you are knowledgeable in both fields, and that if you can come up with appropriate prompt, you can do this kind of science, right? Without LLM, we have to rely on this kind of random event, luck, right? Only luck. We have to rely on luck. But with LLM, we can do this kind of science. And the next foundation model that I want to mention is world model. World model is for training agent, humanoids, and then self-driving agent. And that world model is very similar to scientific foundation model because world model is also aiming at simulating dynamics in macroscopic world, only in macroscopic world, so that one can consider that world model is a subset of a scientific foundation model, but world model is not equation-driven. It is data-driven, right? And after that, we have something like AlphaFold 3 and Rosetta Fold. So basically, protein structures, 3D protein structures, they are decided by physical forces, electric forces, and in nature, only 4 different types of forces exist. Those different 4 types of different forces, gravity, electric force, they will create entire universe. So that in the bottom level, in the most fundamental bottom level, we can solve this protein 3D structure problem with PDEs, but the problem is very slow. So that AlphaFold and Rosetta Fold decided to abstract this problem and solve the problem with data-driven methods. And after that, we have scientific foundation model. Scientific foundation model, its goal is not only for macroscopic world, but also microscopic problems, such as quantum mechanics. And after that, not just the solving PDE, discover new PDEs from observation. So let's compare challenges of LLM and SFM. In the case of LLM, we collect data from the internet. Why? Since we do not know the prior model of English sentence, can you calculate the probability of, for instance, I am a boy? If you can build a mathematical prior model for English, we don't need to collect the data from the internet. Since we do not know prior model for English, we have to collect data from the internet and clean, and then train transformer and that kind of things. But in the case of scientific foundation model, we know prior models. Partial differential equations, they become directly prior models for generating training data, pre-training data. But there is a huge problem. Do we know all enough PDEs? Definitely no, right? So you may hear about the James Webb Telescope story. James Webb Telescope sent many observation data to the Earth, to NASA, and then people watched several observations that are very different from what we know for now, which means our scientific knowledge is incorrect or imperfect. So this characteristic is very different from training LLM. For training LLM, we don't need to worry about, do we know language? Do we know English sentence? We know, right? We just simply collect data from the internet. But for scientific foundation model, can you say that mankind is perfect? Mankind scientific knowledge is perfect? Mankind English knowledge is perfect. Whereas mankind scientific knowledge cannot be perfect. That's a very big problem. Because of that reason, I mean, the goal of the scientific foundation model is delegate observation, right? Delegate the deriving solution from observation, right? We need to get rid of all scientists and engineers in this life cycle. That's the ultimate goal of scientific foundation model. And then, yeah, so in-context learning can be used for scientific foundation model as well. And after that, let me briefly discuss about the challenges of collecting data. So I told you that for training LLM, we collect the text from the internet. But how can you collect PDE data? So the first strategy is we construct random PDE. So here, you see 16 terms. All those popular 16 terms, by selectively choose a subset of them, you can recall all those popular PDEs. Navier-Stokes equation, Maxwell equation. They typically use second order or third order derivative terms. So that if you have this superset of derivative terms, you can generate any kind of PDE, right? So that after randomly sampling PDE, you solve that with very expensive solver or approximated tools such as PIN. So after collecting massive data, you can train transformer and solve the problem. So here is one problem. So this 16 terms is too large to collect the data set. So that we defined the artificially small data set, CDR problem, with the 3 different reaction terms. So here we consider reaction terms for ecology, reaction term for chemistry, reaction term for physics. 3 different types of reaction terms are considered, which means this one model is able to solve ecology problem, chemical problem, physical problem at the same time with one model, since we consider all those different 3 types of reaction. And then after that, yeah, basic philosophy is the same, right? Random dictionary and the random combination of convection, diffusion, reaction terms, and then generating data that you solve. And then we achieve the very nice accuracy. And then one surprising thing is data doesn't need to be clean, right? If you consider OpenAI was also not able to clean out all the internet data set. That's impossible, right? Even for this scientific model, we found that data can be noise or data can be approximated to some degree. But at the core of a data set, of course, you must have a clean data set. Clean data set plus approximated data set. At the end, we have a very large data set, and then no problem. So we observed the very nice data set. So let me conclude my presentation. So pre-training data collection for scientific foundation model is very different from that for language model. But we can borrow concept from LLM since they are leading now. And I'm doing several projects with Samsung and LG for this one because so Samsung and LG, so they are serious about their manufacturing semiconductors and then OLED devices. And then all those manufacturing processes these days, they are modeled by quantum mechanics, but the problem is modeling difficulty is too high. Human cannot understand that kind of tiny words. So that we rely on AI to solve that kind of a problem. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you once again, Professor Park. So next we have Professor Jaeho Lee, who is an assistant professor at POSTECH, and he was the former research scientist at Google. So the title of his talk is Overcoming the Compression Scaling Laws. So please welcome Professor Jaeho Lee with a big round of applause.
All right, thank you for having me here. I work in the general domain of efficient machine learning. Today I'm going to talk about some of my recent works, mostly a collaboration with my amazing students back in POSTECH. So here's a quick disclaimer. Unlike many other talks given in this session, what I'm going to talk about will be quite narrowly scoped. In other words, this talk is going to be very short, thankfully. So we're talking about some problem that we identified, which we believe that nobody is interested in yet, other than us. But also the one we sincerely believe that much, much more people should be interested in. So I'm going to take this chance to spread it further. So this is one of those mandatory figures, right? So the one that you might have seen over and over for the past 5 years when we talk about how the scaling of AI models have gone crazy. So roughly speaking, the term scaling law refers to an empirically observed trend that more data, more parameters, and more compute always decrease the loss in a quite predictable way, whenever there is no bottleneck imposed by the other two factors. So this law is often interpreted in some somewhat pessimistic way that we may not be able to achieve a very smart model unless we spend a lot of cost for the training compute, inference compute, or the data. So that is why everybody is asking now whether we can improve upon the current scaling law by designing any innovative machine learning, say, frameworks. So if we put our focus only on the amount of the inference compute, it has been known for a while that we can actually do much, much better. So this is a plot that is actually 8 years old from researchers at Google, which tracks the ImageNet classification accuracy of mobile nets at various levels of sparsity after pruning. People have shown that whenever we compress the model, represented by the dotted lines, the model tends to perform much better than an uncompressed models, which started small, so that the similar inference costs, they have the similar inference cost to the compressed ones. And people have revisited this observation in 2020 in the context of the scaling laws. So the first observation was that for large-scale foundation models, the compression again leads to a much, much better model quality when given the same budget of inference cost. The slope of the trade-off curve between the inference cost and the loss was roughly similar before and after the compression, but the curve is only shifted downward whenever we compress the model. For post-training compression, the trend saturates at some stage, while for the compressed training, such as gradual pruning or quantization-aware pruning, the trend does not seem to saturate that as easily. So given this scaling law, what are the implications for the on-device AI? In on-device AI, the tasks and hardwares people consider are highly heterogeneous, which means that they are different from one case to another. So the figure on the right is the so-called device farm at the model compression startup called Node AI in South Korea. They have built a whole library of all different hardwares that their clients brought from everywhere, asking for help to deploy some neural networks on those different, highly heterogeneous devices. As you can see, people actually consider a lot of different chips and devices which does not specifically look like NVIDIA GPUs. In such cases, the compression scaling law suggests that in order to get the best performing model for each device, we should start from a model that is strictly larger than what the device can handle, and then we compress the model to a size that can be loaded on device. So here is where everything gets a little bit weird. So in reality, this approach falls into some model that is far from being optimal in most of the cases. In particular, the situation we encounter on a daily basis is that what we may call an overcompression of the models. So precisely, we end up compressing the model to a size that is much smaller than the system requirements. So maybe we have, say, 10 gigs of RAM, but after compression, the model becomes much, much smaller, maybe 4 gigs, leading to an unnecessary accuracy drop. So the main reason why this is happening in the real world is that the compression rates are usually not very flexible. So for example, if you want to quantize the model, there are certain bandwidth that your hardware may be supporting. So that allows you to enjoy the speed up at the hardware. So for NVIDIA GPUs, they come usually at the power of 2s. So we have, say, int4 kernels, maybe int8 kernels, but we do not really have int5 or int7 kernels. So similarly for the unstructured pruning, there is a minimum level of sparsity that you want to meet, which is typically 50%, which helps you to get the speed up from the most commercial hardwares. So if you do not have a sparsity that is greater than 50%, there is no speed up and only slowdown. So the main reason why is that this is due to the sparse matrix formats. Maybe you might have heard all about those 2-4 sparsities or say compressed sparse row formats, which has certain overheads that is required to store the locations of the zeros. So this sort of problem would not have really happened if we had foundation models with diverse number of parameters. Because if over-compression happens, maybe we can simply start again using a larger sized model to the same compression rate, resulting in a slightly larger model with the slightly better performance. However, the problem is that in the area of foundation models, the model sizes are usually not very diverse because they are too costly to train. For example, the open source version of the GPT only came in 2 different sizes, each highly optimized for the hardwares from a specific vendor, such as NVIDIA. So to address this problem, my group has been developing a alternative strategy, which we call the model expansion. So in essence, the idea is quite simple. Before we compress the pre-trained model, we add extra parameters to the model, hoping that the model becomes more robust to the model compression with the help of these added parameters. And while we require that the model, after compression, should still be able to be loaded on the target device, but perhaps more tightly. So in short, I did not talk about how we did it yet, but in short, our approach turned out to be quite effective. So far, we have mostly focused on the case of static per tensor 8-bit weight and activation quantization of the foundation models. And we observed quite dramatic accuracy improvements with very small number of extra parameters. After adding only thousands of parameters to the model, we get a lot of performance gains, usually say 20 to 30% increase in the say model accuracies on both LLMs and the vision encoders. So the idea that how we do it is quite simple. Let us get into more details about how we add extra parameters. So for compressing foundation models, we often observe that the so-called outliers are the key bottleneck. So here, outliers denote the activations with extremely large values, which appear at very limited number of activation channels. whenever there are outliers, the gap between the quantized values must become very large so that they have a large quantization error after quantization. So because this issue is quite significant, the question of how we expand the model to be more robust against compression can be approximated by the question of how we expand the model to mitigate these outliers. And recently, there has been some observations that these outliers also tend to appear at very specific tokens. These tokens are called the, what we call attention sink tokens, which Professor Hwang also talked about, which means that these tokens attract really large attention values from other tokens, despite the semantic content of these tokens being semantically meaningless. So for example, in large language models, the tokens such as the line break or the period tends to be the attention sinks. And for vision encoders, the background patches tend to be the attention sinks. So our idea was that by adding some attention sink tokens as a prefix to our foundation model, we can let this prefix attract all the outliers and let other tokens become relatively outlier-free. As we can pre-process this, say, prefix tokens of the corresponding to artificially added attention sinks with an uncompressed model, so that the compressed model can only process the activations without significant outliers. So we can find the right sinkish tokens by a simple greedy search algorithm, and we can optionally do some additional fine-tuning. For vision encoders, things are slightly more difficult, as the notion of the background patch is not universal, which means that a background patch that works for one certain image may not really be working for another image. For example, a patch of water may be a nice background for the images of the water birds, but the same patch may not be a good candidate background patch for the land animals. However, it turns out that these seemingly different backgrounds become quite similar to each other whenever they are processed by several early layers of the vision encoders, so that we can use these middle layer activations as an outlier attracting prefix, just as in the case of the large language models. So in essence, this model expansion technique that we have developed is aimed at addressing the gap between sparsely placed hardware accelerable compression rates. So in particular, the prefix-based mechanism that we developed introduces a very small amount of over-parameterization to give a slight boost on the performance of the compressed model. So we have done so with a very small amount of the training computation and have done most of the work by simple inference-only search without any heavy training. So our group is now on our way to extend search algorithms to a more compute-abundant regime using a larger number of parameters and more training compute. So independently with that, we are also working toward turning this model expansion framework into a pre-training recipe, for instance, on applying this technique to improve the stability of the quantized training or sparse training. Finally, we are always open for any discussion or collaboration, so please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any thoughts or comments. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you once again, Professor Lee. So our final presentation is by Dr. Karteek Alahari, a research director and deputy scientific director for artificial intelligence at INRIA. So the title of his talk is going to be "Are Low Resource Vision Language Models Viable?" So please welcome Dr. Alahari with a big round of applause.
Thank you, first of all, to the organizers for organizing this amazing event, and thank you for the invitation to speak here. So what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about what we've been doing in this area of low resource vision language models. So it sort of continues the theme of some of the previous speakers of more efficient large models. So this is work that was primarily done by my PhD student Ziki Kang, together with collaborators at Toyota Motor Europe. So one of the motivations for looking at this problem is to sort of address this question of how do we deploy these vision language models, especially on edge devices, take autonomous cars or mobile applications. And some of the constraints that you get under these scenarios are the customer needs that you have in terms of, they might be asking for real-time interaction. You need to have new knowledge acquisition, so sort of to personalize these models to their use cases. And they also need to be sort of easy to use. There could be another set of constraints, which are mainly resource-driven. Could be because of low compute budget, could be because of very little human supervision that you'd like to have the model for training them. And what is typically the case is that the performance of the smaller models tends to be unsatisfactory. So the first set of constraints gives us the challenges of dealing with sort of an online data stream, which means we need to be able to adapt swiftly to the changing data distributions. And the second set of constraints gives us questions of having a model that is predominantly training free, one where we would not like to use any annotations, and something that would also boost the performance and not lose performance in what happens with the smaller models. So what we propose is online in-context distillation with the main goal of improving small vision language models. And by small, I mean models which are roughly in the range of 4 billion to 12 billion parameters. And what we would like to do this is in real time. So one natural question that we might ask is, okay, why don't we use techniques that we know in terms of fine-tuning? But that leads to questions of, first of all, the human annotation, which is expensive, time-consuming, and may not be able to something that we can achieve. The other question that we might like to avoid is, okay, can we avoid this whole question of model training? Because it comes with an extra computational cost, and training or continually training these models tends to result in phenomena such as forgetting, where the model tends to only remember the latest data that it has seen and forgotten the previous ones it has seen in the past. So in this scenario, what is a learning framework, I think that was mentioned earlier today as well, is that of in-context learning. So where the idea is to dynamically inject knowledge into the model. So can we use or leverage this learning framework is the question that we're trying to explore. So just in a few words, what do I mean by in-context learning? So imagine we have a test query given by x hat. What we would like to ensure is that the expected loss that we have in the case of in-context prediction, shown here on the left side, should be lower than what you get for a zero-shot prediction. So what we are essentially doing is, into this loss term here, we are introducing a context set, which is a set that is built from sort of a support pool consisting of triplets of samples, which in the case of vision language models would be an image, a question that is associated with an image for a VQA kind of task, and the answer that corresponds to that task. So essentially, there is some sort of annotation in this case. So this is the sort of the standard in-context learning framework. So I'll give you one quick example for this. So here is a case of a large language model for text, where you have several different reviews that were given by users, and each of these reviews expresses a certain sentiment. For example, terrible dishes expresses a negative sentiment. Delicious food says that is a positive feedback that has been given for particular dishes. So what in this setup we would like to do is, you have a question that you'd like to ask, given a review which says a good meal, what is the sentiment that you're trying to predict? So in this case, there are several demonstrations that come from these K examples that you see here at the top. So that is the context that has been added for the test example. And what we are doing is providing all of these as input to a standard pre-trained large language model, which is frozen, and hopefully it will produce us the result which is positive here. So this is a line of work that has been looked at over the past few years, and especially in the context of LLMs. The example I showed you just earlier on is the case where you have sort of prepended demonstrations which kind of help you to answer the query that you have. And this has shown to result in significant boost in performance, especially for LLMs. So what we'd like to do is kind of analyze this question in the context of VLMs. So there's been some work that's been happening in the last couple of years. The first one is one that uses sort of image-text pairs as context, provide lots of image, and the corresponding text captions with them. There have also been strategies to select the different demonstrations. What are the most relevant demonstrations that you'd like to give as part of your test query? There has also been works which actually have shown that in the case of VLMs, it appears that the vision side of the data set hasn't really helped, and in fact has negatively impacted in terms of the performance. So these are some of the observations that have been made. And what has been sort of the general analysis is that the use of ICL for VLMs in the context of specifically small VLMs is sort of incomplete. There is no clear-cut answer whether this is a useful thing to do. So that's the sort of the first summary of what we have seen from the past work, in that the performance of ICL in the context of small VLMs is not clear-cut. So the second idea that kind of inspired us is this whole idea of using distillation, something that has been, again, going on in various different contexts, especially also in the case of VLMs. So this is sort of an idea that seems very attractive when you're trying to deal with large models and kind of distill them to their smaller variants, especially when you're trying to deploy them in a real-time scenario. So can we exploit this idea? And there have been initial ideas sort of in the form of giving instructions to these large vision language models, or even ideas such as chain of thoughts and so on. But what typically happens in this scenario is they all tend to rely on additional training data, which means there is extra compute cost, there is a need for annotated data, and there is this risk of what I've called here as catastrophic forgetting, where the model tends to forget everything that has seen in the past and only remembers the latest set of examples that the model has seen. So the second conclusion from previous work is that we still kind of need annotations to be able to deal with these models. So what we're going to do is start by analyzing the performance of ICL with these small VLMs. And as I said, I'm kind of categorize VLMs into sort of three types based on their sizes, in terms of tiny models with less than 4 billion parameters, small, sort of the intermediate range. Then there's medium, which is between 12 and 40 billion. And then we go all the way large, which is something that we're not dealing with, but these models are way more expensive to learn, to run, and to deploy, etc. So what we did was to evaluate these variety of VLMs on a bunch of benchmark data sets. And you can see 3 examples here, going from left to right, sort of to more increasing difficulty cases. So I won't go through all the curves that you see here, but just a couple of observations. The first one that we see here is that small VLMs have promising in-context learning capability. So if you see the intern VL model, the 2.5 version, let's say the 2 triangle curves, and then the one with the dots. And as you see the number of parameters increasing from 1 to 4 to 8, you see that the performance does tend to increase as you go more and more shots in terms of the context that you're giving. And that is sort of the general observation that you see. The second one that we see, which is encouraging for the future, is the tiny VLMs may not be great at solving all the tasks, but they tend to improve as you go from the intern VL 1.5, shown here in blue, to, let's say, the intern VL 2 with the same number of parameters, and then to the intern VL 2.5, which is the one with the triangle here. You see an increasing trend in terms of performance over the years. So that is sort of encouraging for us to go back and even do something with these tiny models. So in the few minutes that are remaining, I won't go through all the details of this, this framework that I've shown here of our in-context, online in-context distillation framework. So what we would like to do, just to remind ourselves, is to improve this, this task or this goal over here, where you have a set of questions that you would like to ask for your problem with a model which is relatively small and something that you'd like to keep frozen and obtain the necessary prediction. And what we would like to do here is to sort of leverage sort of bigger or sort of the teacher model, which is kind of coming from a cloud. So here we have this sort of small, large versus edge cloud model collaboration, where the model that is running on the edge is a significantly smaller model, and on the cloud, we leverage that something significantly bigger in terms of the size and the compute that is needed. So what we would like to do here is to kind of create this pool of examples or these demonstrations that the student or the smaller model can leverage. So these, again, without not going into the details, are examples that we generate based on the query image that we have here, shown in this box here, and based on the similarity with respect to several data images in our data set, we kind of come up with a pool. And what we then do is to leverage a teacher model to annotate all the images in the pool automatically. So what this solves is the problem of go through with manual annotation, but we leverage on a stronger model, which gives us all these annotations. And a couple of things also, that we add into the model is not to query the pool of demonstrations that we have every single time, but to do it only in cases where there's some sort of uncertainty in the response that is provided by the smaller student model. So this is essentially for us to reduce the number of requests that we make to our cloud model. So just a few things to kind of show some of the evaluations. There are a few more in the paper that we released earlier last week on arXiv. So a couple of things to note here is we do see, for example, models which are in the small category of 7 billion or 8 billion parameters. By adding these ideas of in-context distillation, we see that they have had a huge boost in performance with not much increase in terms of the compute budget, which is shown here on the x-axis, and you can see both the performances of these 7 and 8 billion parameters have been boosted significantly. And what is also interesting to see is that these are significantly better than other models which are significantly larger in terms of the number of parameters, going up to 38 billion or 26 billion parameters. And the teacher model in this case was that of GPT-4, but in the paper we did experiments with various versions of the teacher model, going all the way from GPT-4 to even using the intern VL models as teachers. So what I'll do then is to sort of summarize very quickly what I've talked about here, which is kind of presenting a framework which is sort of a step towards building more effective small vision language models. And the way we are doing it is by presenting a in-context distillation framework, which kinds of eliminates the need for manual annotation and also the need for model training. What we did to achieve this is kind of add the idea of test time scaling by building this dynamic pool of demonstrations and also selecting these demonstrations effectively and sort of using these demonstrations only when it is really required. And finally, to end, I'd like to sort of advertise a little bit for our lab and say that we're always interested in collaborations in various forms and also for postdocs and PhDs. So if there are people in your labs who are interested, so please come by and chat about it. So thank you again.
Okay, so I'd like to thank you to all 6 speakers for their excellent presentations, and now we will move on to the panel discussion. So including all presenters today, 6 presenters, we will additionally invite one panelist, Dr. Sang-do Yoon, Director of AI Lab at Naver. So may I kindly invite all panelists to come up to the stage. Since we have 7 panelists here, and as you know, I mean, our schedule is kind of, I mean, I'm afraid we are running out of time. So actually, we arrange the agenda with the panelists to save some time. So let me start with the very first question. So with the rapid spread of large language models and multimodal AI, training and running these models are very, very expensive, right? So could you briefly share your recent research or approaches addressing these challenges? So anyone who can start with? Professor Takeuchi?
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me start. Yeah, so that's a very annoying problem because in each lab it's very difficult to set up all the computational resources. But there are lots of research work we can do without like huge computational resources. So what we do is that we set up the middle scale model in our computer system and setting up a group of problems for fine tuning. So fine tuning can be done very efficiently. So once we develop an algorithm, we test in one of those fine tuning problems. Then sometimes we can evaluate the algorithm. So basically we do something like this. So we can, if we have a good problem, even using a large scale model but with low computational resources, we can study machine learning problem.
Okay, thanks for your comments, and Scum or
As mentioned before, I also agree that the RL approaches can be one of the possible solutions. Of course, RL also requires large computational power, but I think it requires fewer GPU than current large language model. So from this perspective, I also working on applying RL method in the field of medical AI.
okay, so thank you. So Professor Hwang.
So the presentation that I gave today was basically what I wanted to say was all training free. It was not that we wanted to do training free because it's training free. That was kind of our desperate measure to do something meaningful within the amount of resources that we had in our lab. So it's not that I specifically had chosen those problems for the students. It's more that they found their ways to do impactful research given this resource constraints. So, but it turns out that because of that, they ended up not relying so much on just compute or data. They tried their best to, internally kind of understand what they could do within the scope, within the resources that they had, and it turned out that, as you could tell, we had some meaningful results because they ended up finding something that are not really, I guess, that easy. They're not trivial. They seem trivial once they're discovered, but as you know, all the things that are useful and interesting become trivial once they're discovered, right? So that's one of the. Can't really say that that's the best solution that we have, but it's something that, in terms of just purely academic perspective, I guess it kind of allows us to look for some breakthroughs within the resource constraint, and this, for now, that's something that we'll probably work on and not relying too much on fine-tuning. So it's one of the technical efforts that we've been doing these days. Thank you.
Thank you. So Professor Park.
So yeah, my experience related to your question is developing more efficient architecture. So for instance, so recent popular language model Q1. So Q1 is hybrid architecture of attention and then gated delta net. So as you may know, the gated delta net is one of the simplest type of state space model. So I think this kind of approach will be very popular in the future, since we cannot rely on transformer in the future because of too much power consumption. So we have to go for another architecture, which might be the state space model or discrete diffusion language model. But anyway, so Q1 showed one example, hybrid architecture between hybrid architecture of attention and then state space model is promising. So that can be answer to your question. And after that, so we can also think about the key value caching and linear attention and that kind of things to decrease power consumption. And especially, so we observed that depending on the key value caching mechanism for your input prompt, so the performance varies a lot while decreasing the power consumption. So that, yeah, we can think about the new architecture and then key value caching and then linear attention and that kind of things.
Okay, thank you for your very insightful comments. Yes.
Okay, for me, the story is a little bit different because I work directly in the topic of efficient machine learning. So I actually take this challenge as some blessing on my side, so that everybody now are interested in model efficiency. So that is actually one reason why I try to focus on this narrow topic. And another thing is that, as far as I'm concerned, I don't think that the story is quite different even before this foundation model era, because back then people studied things like, say, model architecture search. And those experiments were the ones that is only runnable by the big techs, even back then in the, say, 2015. So there are still, like, there was and is and always will be a gap between what big techs can study and what academia can study. So I'm not really that worried about, say, this gap between the academia industry.
Yeah, actually that comment is kind of connected to the second question, so maybe we can come back later for the second question. And you two might have kind of different perspective because you're not in the academia. I mean, maybe you have huge number of GPUs in your company, or I'm not sure. But so yeah, could you add on some kind of comments?
So yeah, going to this question of efficiency, so I think the work I presented is sort of in these lines of how do we make these smaller versions of these models work better, because one of the things that, I think the mantra has been the bigger the better, the bigger the model, the more the parameters, the more data that is used. We do see that the performance is clearly better, but I think we also have sort of some signal. Some of the work that we have done is one step towards this, to see that even with smaller models, but doing them in a slightly different way, we can benefit from their performance being better than what the standard small models give us. So that's one direction that that we are interested in. Another one is, I think, goes back to the different types of attention that was being mentioned. So we were also interested in looking at a sort of a lightweight attention model, which is inspired by the Fourier transforms, which help us do these compute these attentions much more efficiently. So that's sort of another way of reducing the computational burden of these the core of these models, which is that of attention.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so, yeah, I fully agree with the previous comments. So I'm just thinking what I have to say as the last time. So one thing I want to highlight on top of the previous comment is about the decoding time efficiency. So our company is also carefully looking at the cost, cutting the cost in the inference time. So because of the emergence of reasoning models and agentic systems, agentic models are coming, and so context lengths and their decoded tokens are so many, so much long contextual input to the models, and they should transport to other agents or something. So we have to consider efficient system to communicate with each agent, or efficiently compress the context to cutting down the cost of inference.
Okay, so thank you for your comments. And in the morning, Professor Jan Lukun also highlighted the role of academia, right? But our second question is, given the limited access to high-end computational resources, how can academic researchers and collaborative communities still derive AI progress effectively? What's the role of academia in such kind of situations? I mean, environments. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so like Professor Yan Lekun said, we definitely have some area to work on for academia, even if we don't really have like huge computational resources. But at the same time, like academia come together, like this AI research lab. So if multiple labs work together, and if we have like one model, and we can work together from different perspectives to that model, then it might work. So this kind of collaboration would be very nice. And also in our RIKEN AIP, we are not doing that, but we are planning to do that kind of things.
That's great. Yeah, thank you for the comments.
Yeah, actually, I think these days, too many researchers are just focusing on boosting AI performance without requiring domain knowledge carefully. So with the same perspective, I also think that some collaboration between different domain researchers, it can be make the efficient AI model.
Okay, thank you. Professor Hwang? Yeah.
I don't know if I'm being optimistic, but I think there's always going to be a wall that we're all going to hit, and at that point, I think still we're going to need the ways that we solve problems. Like I mentioned, we have our own ways, and they do deliver from time to time. And I think in the end, we'll hit some practical wall, and I guess that's when the academia is going to rise. And so I'm not too worried in terms of how we're going to collaborate. And as Professor Kam had said, I'm also working on medical field, and that's where the domain knowledge from the academia is absolutely crucial. So in that sense, I think it's not just me, but I guess my students also kind of start realizing that it's not just the AI that we need. We need like some sort of plus X specialty that only the academia is able to do. So I think we're just all making some transitions. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, Professor Park.
So let me restrict my answer to the scientific foundation model domain only, since a large language model might be different from scientific foundation models. So for me, while doing research, the biggest problem is how to obtain clean data set. For instance, so these days I'm building scientific foundation model for predicting and analyzing semiconductor manufacturing processes. So of course, I can obtain some virtual data set after solving PDs, but the clean data set is only managed by Samsung, and then by the government rule, by the government law, they cannot share that data set with us, even though we are doing project together. So collaboration between academia and professional industry, very important. But because of some national law and national restriction, sharing data set is prohibited. Sometimes this hinders very active collaboration, and then academia might just studying very superficial problems because of that reason. So that, yeah, we need sharing data set. Since, obtaining that data set is very expensive, right? So how can you easily obtain real semiconductor manufacturing process data set? So almost impossible, only except Samsung, TSMC, and Intel. So yeah, that's my viewpoint.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Professor Lee.
I agree with all the previous panel's opinions, and just to add one point, I think one aspect that academia lags behind industry is how the knowledge regarding the machine learning engineering is actually shared. So in, say, big techs, there are plenty of manuals on how to optimize your resource so that you can run the experiment that was seemingly impossible to run, but using some tools, surprisingly, they tend to become runnable by, say, very small tricks. So I was thinking that maybe academia needs something like a mechanism to incentivize sharing all those small engineering tips with each other. So one challenge that I really like is these training CFAR 10 in 10 seconds challenge or something like that. I don't really remember the title. But with that simple challenge on the GitHub, everybody participated and provided their own recipe of lightning training of the very small models. And I think it is a very good start, and we need some mechanism to incentivize those sharing efforts, maybe in the form of a workshop, maybe by having a formal challenge with more prizes, or anything like that, in order for us to squeeze more out of what we have right now.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, so from the perspective in the industry, so what kind of research in the academia should focus more on? Yeah, you guys can share such kind of things.
So I'll stay with the academic perspective. I'll talk about a couple of examples. Because, I think this discrepancy between the resources that are available for industry and academia, I think they have always been there, and maybe it's only now we are seeing it even more. But this has always been there. But then that comes with there are different advantages to working in industry versus working in an academic environment. Perhaps slightly fewer constraints in academia, but then maybe more resources in industry. What we have, for example, in France is this model where there are sort of collaborative PhDs that go on between an academic lab and an industry. And I've had the fortune of actually collaborating with people at Naval Labs Europe and Meta and other companies that are based in France, and we've had joint PhD students. So I think there are certain problems that can only be tackled in the industry environment with the amount of resources that are available. But then there's plenty of other things. We've seen here already, several examples over the course of today in terms of even though they're big models, there are certain and many things that are still very interesting that we can do. And there is a bunch of other things. And if you were to listen to Jan, don't work on LLMs. So there's an even bigger space of problems to explore. So I think maybe one way of summarizing is sort of to put our eggs in different baskets and work on different problems, and leave certain things to others who can actually do them.
That's a good point. So yes.
Yes. So actually, I also have defined me as an academic researcher in industry, but yeah, keeping me as an industrial mind. So in a very short term, the current problem is there's some irony. So company want to hire some good student researcher, but company says, yeah, do you have any large scale experience, and the students said, "Oh, we don't have many GPUs." So there's some ironical situations there. So I guess this problem is not permanent, so this will go away soon. But currently, students may have some strategies. So they will. The first one is they go to the big lab and big companies lab and collaborate with them and get some experience with them, or project down their research onto the more smaller size with more creative and challenging ideas, and make some new breakthroughs from there. So, because the middleware and intermediate level ideas and skills will be, those kind of things would not be very impactful these days. So, yeah, that's my little advice for the students.
Okay, that would be very valuable. So let's move on to the final question, but this is not the question for all panelists. So if you have anything to say, please do that. So from an application perspective, how do you see AI research impacting real-world domains? So are you working on any related project or studies? I mean, like healthcare or finance, or of course, some of you presented some work on, the science, something like that.
So I'm quite interested in AI for science, and I hear a lot of with great interest that talk about scientific foundation model and also molecular optimization. So it might be interesting to, having some kind of workshop focusing not only the diverse AI, but also, for example, the AI for science and international collaboration, and also collaboration with AI people and some science people. So that kind of thing might be nice. And so I really enjoy the other speakers talk about AI for science.
And then, some people discuss about the molecular design and that kind of things. But let me talk about little different story. So basically, I'm a professor at KAIST, and at the same time, I'm a chief AI officer at the company OncoCross, which was listed in KOSTAK last year. And that OncoCross company now focuses on finding new usage of existing medicine. Sometimes one medicine, one molecular, at the very beginning was developed for purpose A. But sometimes we found that purpose B is also working, right? So we have many search examples for drug discovery. Drug-related industry, but the drug discovery is very challenging, since AI-generated drug should pass the all those very complicated processes to prove the safety and effectiveness. But in the many pharmacy, many professional company, they have many drugs, many molecules, which is safe, but not effective for its original purpose. So our company is utilizing AI to finding a different purpose, which is different from original purpose. So which is called the drug repurposing or drug repositioning. So this kind of business is very promising, and then very cost effective in comparison with the drug discovery. So that can be very promising in the future. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing. And anyone else who can add something more? Dr. Yoon? Okay.
So I'm not actually working with about healthcare or other AI for science things, but there's lots of things beyond the large language models or visual language models, because LLM and VLM should be adapted to more frequently with the real-world problems and real-world environments. So there's lots of problems there. So, and many friends of in those industries says they find some talents who really work with the real data and real evaluation. So that means some kind of dirty works. So curating data set or making some evaluation suits or something is very valuable. Because, even though that is just 1 or 2 lines in the paper, but that is very valuable, is what I heard from the friends in there. So maybe many of us will think like this. Yeah. So I want to add this on top of that.
Okay, that's great. So thank you. And anyone who can add something?
As I introduced in my talk, I'm currently working on AI-driven drug discovery, and actually I also participating in a collaborate project involving many biology company and lab. So I think these kinds of collaboration can help our AI model move closer to real-world application.
Okay, thank you. So I think this concludes our panel discussion, and thank you all to the panelists, and thank you to everyone in the audience for your attention. So please give them another big round of applause.